It's 5:30, so how we run our meetings on Zoom during this time of social distancing. If visual aids are used during the meeting, the presenter will share the screen with the call. Participants will not be able to view them without a computer, smartphone, or tablet. All participants will be entered into the meeting with their audio muted, meaning the commission and the public will not be able to hear you. Presenters will be unmuted when their agenda item comes up. We ask that all online presenters use good conference call etiquette and mute their line when not speaking, and please introduce yourself each time you speak. If you have public comment on an agenda item or under regular public comment, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom. Staff will call on you and unmute you. We ask that speakers give their name and address for the minutes. The county reserves the right to shut off the microphone and remove any speaker from the meeting if they're being vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. The chat function has been disabled and a recording of this meeting will be available on our website. With that, looking at our agenda this evening, we have a total of 7 consent agenda items. We have 3 items on our regular agenda, and we'll do appointments, general public comment, and then commissioner or administrator miscellaneous. With that, commissioners, is there any consent agenda item that you would like to have removed for further discussion?
I don't have anything.
Seeing none, I'd be happy to take a motion on consent agenda items 1, 2, 3. Oh, is there a member of the public there? Sorry, either online or in person that would like to have a consent agenda item removed?
We don't have anyone for a consent agenda item.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone online?
No.
Thank you, Jill. Okay, now I would take a motion for items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 3-0. Moving on to our regular agenda. We will start with item 1, which is a planning department item to consider a conditional use permit, CUP 20-00300 for mining excavation at North 1800 Road and East 1200 Road. Mary Miller.
Good evening. I'll share my screen. I'm Mary Miller, City County Planner. And as you mentioned, this is a conditional use permit for a mining, excavation, and extraction of natural resources use. The location is in the northeast corner of North 1800 Road and East 1200 Road. This is in Tier 3 of the Lawrence Urban Growth Area. And on this graphic, properties within the city Lawrence limits are highlighted in yellow. This is a subject property. It contains stand and mature trees and a pond, which is classified by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife as a wetland. And the borrow pit will be located primarily on the east side of the property. A borrow pit meets the definition of a mining, excavation, and extraction of natural resources conditional use. This use requires a CUP regardless of what zoning district it is, what district it's in. The removal of soil from the subject property is the subject of this CUP. The placement in the disposal pits to the north is a reclamation step required with CUP 1191, which was approved for those ash and effluent disposal pits. This graphic shows the Westar site in the area. The subject property is outlined in red, and the proposed borrow pit areas are shown in dashed red lines. There was a change following the Planning Commission meeting, and some of the borrow pit here has been reduced so that it doesn't just damage these trees. And I'll show you that later when we look at the site plan, that area has been pulled back. There is an internal access road that they will use to access. It'll connect to this haul route on the Westar facility And then to the north in blue, these are the ash pits that are being filled in. And the applicant estimates that the first year they should be able to get these pits filled in. It'll take about 120,000 cubic yards of fill. And so they'll be working pretty steadily the first year. Their hours of operation they're proposing is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. from Monday through Friday. After the first year, they'll work more intermittently, and they expect to go on for about another 9 years and fixing up and finishing some projects throughout the plant site. But the first year will be the most intensive use. Vehicles will be stored either on the site or on the Evergy plant site to the east. Employees will park on the Evergy plant site, and the adjacent roads will not be used for the hauling of materials. They will use that internal access road only. And so this is a plan that was provided to the Planning Commission. And as you can see, the borrow pit extends quite a ways down past the pond. In red, that's the access drive. One of the conditions of approval is that if this access drive is to be moved, it can only be moved to the east, which is further away from the residence. There's a residence up to the northwest. It cannot move to the west. There are berms. The topsoil will be stockpiled in this area to create kind of a screening berm from the residences to the south. The stand and mature trees follows this direction, which provides a berm from properties to this area. And then there'll be a stockpile berm to the northwest to provide a kind of a buffer to the residents to the northwest. And this shows the area following the Planning Commission meeting. At the public hearing part, a member of the public commented that these trees could be saved. They asked that it could be saved. And so the applicant provided this revised plan, which shows the borrow pit being reduced. And so they don't damage or destroy so many of the trees in the area. No ponds are being proposed with this borrow pit. Typically with a borrow pit, we end up with a pond, but they intend to grade the property, and then it'll be like kind of a gradual slope. And then at the east side of each borrow pit, there'll be a steeper slope, which kind of creates a stepped effect to the property. But none of the slopes will be greater than 3-to-1 following reclamation. And so we review our conditional use permits with the review criteria and the zoning regulations, which include the golden factors. The zoning in the area on the top left graphic, the property is zoned GI, general industrial, the county zoning, and in dark purple, all that area to the north and east of the property is zoned GI. And to the southeast, we have IG, which is general industrial, but in the city limits. And then other zonings in the area are Ag 1 and Ag 2, which are agricultural properties, and transitional agricultural. And then we have limited RS10. There were 2 parcels that were annexed into the city of Lawrence in the 1980s, and these are zoned RS10, adjacent to the subject property. And the land uses in the bottom right graphic were taken from the Douglas County Appraiser's Office. Primarily the uses are agricultural, specifically west of East 1200 Road. The subject property is currently used for agriculture. East of East 1200 Road, but south of North 1800 Road, we have a residential development. And then the remainder of the area is primarily utility and industrial. The records indicated the properties in the north was commercial. I didn't confirm that, but on this graphic, I went ahead and marked it as a commercial use. I wasn't able to find that that use is still being used commercially. But on this graphic, I identify the residential properties in yellow, utilities are shown in blue, and the industrial properties are shown in purple. Kind of gives an idea of how the uses are laid out in the area. And the proposed use could be compatible with the uses in the area, provided we have the right conditions to protect the nearby residential properties. And then we look for the compatibility of the use with the character of the area. And as you know, with other applications we've done, we typically look at about a mile in all directions. In this case, that was truncated a little. We didn't go a complete mile to the east because we have a very intense industrial district to the east. And the assumption is that anything that happens on this site probably would not affect anything beyond the industrial area. And we used Interstate 70 as a southern boundary. Once again, we have the city of Lawrence to the south, and I doubt that any changes on this parcel would have an impact on properties south of Interstate 70. We did go a mile to the west and to the north. Natural features in the area include the floodway for the Kansas River, and then we have floodway and floodplain associated with the tributaries traveling through the area. Agriculture and rural residential uses are the predominant uses west of East 1200 Road, and industrial or utility uses are the predominant use east, except of course for those residential uses right south of the subject property. And industrial use, such as this mining and excavation use, the borrow pit, would extend the industrial uses further to the west onto an industrially zoned parcel. The borrow pit would temporarily alter the character of the area, but when the property has been reclaimed, there should be no lasting impact on the character of the area. We evaluate the use for the impact on the natural environment. There are wetlands and stands of mature trees, as we noted, and there's some areas of steep slopes on the property, but these would be kept out of the borrow pit area. The wetlands and the trees to be protected will be fenced with construction fencing prior to the commencement of the use. And that would be for any trees or wetlands that are within 25 feet of the borrow pit area. If you're further away than that, they won't be fenced, but where there could be a possibility of impact, those will be fenced and signed. And the signs will just note there can be no storage or parking of equipment in that area. The drainage pattern should remain the same following reclamation as before. So the use is not expected to have a significant impact on the natural environment. We evaluate for the impact on community facilities, transportation network, or utilities in the area. And as I mentioned, the haul vehicles will all use the internal access road, so there'll be no haul traffic on the adjacent roadways. The employees will use North 1800 Road to access the site, but this is classified as a minor arterial road. So the additional employee traffic is not expected to have an impact on that. They will be using water to water the access road that leads into the borrow pit. They currently use water from the Kansas River to water all the access roads on the facility, and they'll just expand the route to include that. So it won't affect, they won't be using rural water. So the proposed use should not have an impact on community facilities, the transportation network, or utilities in the area. A time limit is being proposed. The applicant noted they thought they could get their work done in 10 years. 1 year more intense use, and then the 9 years just finishing up projects on the site. So the recommendation is to have a 10-year limit to December 31st, 2030. And then we look at what's the suitability for the property to the uses to which it is restricted. It's currently suitable to the uses which are restricted in the industrial district, and following reclamation, it would again be suitable for those uses. The compliance with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan recommends we protect high quality agricultural soils, which they identify as class 1 and 2 soils. There are no class 1 and 2 soils on this site. It recognizes the need for extraction of resources to help keep construction costs reasonable, as long as we mitigate impacts to the environment and surrounding uses in the evaluation. The extraction of resources here is not going to be applied to construction costs, but they will facilitate the Westar, or what is it now, Evergy utility facility. And the impacts will be mitigated with the conditions applied to the conditional use permit. The comp plan does recommend that we minimize agricultural land conversion to other non-agricultural uses and maintaining working agricultural lands. This use is a temporary use. It is on industrially zoned property, but after the 10 years when it's reclaimed, it will be suitable again for agricultural uses or for other uses which are allowed in that zoning district. The area plan, the K10 and Farmers Turnpike plan, is part of the comprehensive plan, and the subject property is marked with the arrow. And this is identified as office research for future land uses upon annexation. The time frame of the CUP is expected to expire at the end of 2030, and this area is not expected to annex into the city of Lawrence until after the life of the plan, which would be sometime after 2040. And so the impact of this use should not have any impact on the future land uses. It will be reclaimed to a site that would be suitable for uses recommended in the long range plan or for the uses permitted in that zoning district. This was and then the final thing we look at is it compliant with the standards in the zoning regulations? We have specific standards we've set for quarries or other mining and excavation uses. It is compliant with the setbacks and the berming requirements. Blasting is not going to be used for this borrow pit. One of the requirements is to have a performance bond for reclamation. The applicant provided a performance bond for the reclamation of these borrow pits, as well as for the reclamation of the disposal pits to the north. Dust control is required, and they've indicated they will water the interior hall route to keep the dust down. They have an erosion control plan. If they don't use the borrow pit, if it's unused for a time, it will be covered with topsoil and seeded to prevent erosion. They're not adding any impervious surface, and the grading will maintain that drainage pattern to the southwest. So it's not expected to impact drainage in the area. So the project as proposed is compliant with the standards and the zoning regulations. And the Planning Commission voted unanimously to forward this application to the Board of County Commissioners with a recommendation for approval based on the findings in the staff report and subject to the conditions. And these are summarized here. We have the time frame that I mentioned earlier. There is a phasing requirement. There are 2 separate borrow pit areas. One can be open at a time. When it's completed and it's graded and seeded, the other one can be open. So we'll only have one open at a time. There'll be no blasting. The performance bond for reclamation was provided. There is a condition requiring all access to be internal. They cannot use the access points on the adjacent roadways for the CUP, so all access will be internal. The perimeter must be fenced and signed as no trespassing. The protection, fencing, and signage for the wetlands and trees will need to be installed before the activity commences. They have the erosion control measures, but it will topsoil and seed if the borrow pit is going to remain unused for some time. Dust control of the interior hall road will be done by watering. The hours of operation are listed at 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. If they need extra hours, they would need to come to the County Commission for approval. No exterior lighting will be used, and when reclaimed, the property will have no slopes greater than 3 to 1. And so that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer questions if you have any, and I know the applicant is present today as well.
Questions for Mary?
I don't have any.
Okay,
I don't have any either.
thank you. Would the applicant like to make a statement? Is the applicant here, Mary? Mary, you're on mute if you're.
I believe they are here.
Oh, there they are.
Hey, good evening, commissioners. This is Jeff Green. I'm the environmental director at Evergy. We were just on to answer any questions if there were any.
Thank you, Jeff. We may have some. We'll see. We'll probably take public comment first and then see if we have any other questions. Any questions for Jeff, Commissioner Thelma, and Commissioner Druso?
I don't have any.
So any member of the public that would like to speak on this item, you can just let Sarah know if you're there at the courthouse or online by raising your hand.
Yes, we do have public comment here at the courthouse on this item.
Okay, thank you.
You should come up and sit right there. Yep. And then just speak up and they can see and hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Eric Hyde. I just have a few questions about this. If I'm not mistaken, this site location is near.
Commissioner Kelly, I can't hear.
Can you just speak a little louder?
Yeah, my name is Eric Hyde. If I'm not mistaken, this site location is near the Greenhouse Church's location for their outdoor field assembly, which I've attended sometimes. And I am not saying anything is absolutely wrong with this. I am just concerned about the damage to the environment, the damage to the trees. And I am also concerned about honestly, Evergy seizing more property in this community that will be property in the future. That's all.
That's all we have here at the courthouse.
And I'm not seeing anybody online at this point.
So if it's okay with the commission, I'll go ahead and move to approve a conditional use permit CUP 20-00300 for mining and excavation on approximately 38.5 acres at the northeast corner of the intersection of East 1200 Road and North 1800 Road, Route 438, and forward the recommendation of the approval. And yeah, this is a mistake in there. Yeah, we're going to cross out forwarding it to the county commissioners and say, based on the finding of facts noted in the staff report and subject to the conditions listed in the staff.
Second.
I think I might have froze there for a bit. Oh, okay. Well, tell me what happened in my absence. Did someone make a motion?
No, you made the motion and I seconded it.
Oh, great. Okay, good. Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, passes 3-0. Thank you, Mary. Okay, our second item is for a community partner agreement with Trinity In-Home Care. For the public, this was something we had a study session on 2 weeks ago. We had last Wednesday off. And so it looks like Jill, are you speaking on this one, Jill? I see you ready to go. And Scott Crickey's here, so we'll turn it over to Jill.
Good evening, commissioners. Yes, as Commissioner Kelly mentioned 2 weeks ago, we had an in-depth conversation about Trinity In-Home Care and got a deeper understanding of the organization's current operations and how they're serving clients and their financial needs in a short term and a long term. But at the end of that conversation, we circled back to the original request that was submitted to the Board of County Commissioners as part of the FY 2021 budget process, which was in the amount of $30,000, which was at the time that the decision was made ultimately to not include that at that time was over the summer, to not ultimately include that in the recommended budget at that time, contingent on a future determination of whether or not Trinity ended up receiving any of the CARES Act funding, which they did not. And so making that determination, and if memory serves, I don't think that they applied either. Regardless, so after the conversation last week and some consultation with Sarah and follow up with Scott and Stephanie, the decision at this point, we felt it was a safe recommendation to forward to the commission a recommendation to add the additional $30,000 that was originally submitted in their supplemental request for 2021 budget process, with the knowledge that the information that was shared with the commission as part of the study session that kind of gave that full picture of what it would take to get the organization to optimal financial and operational levels. That could be future information that we would, be well positioned to bring back to the commission if that was the will of the commission, or if, you know, if it was the will of Trinity at some point to bring that back in a future budget request. And I know Scott's here and Stephanie's here. If there's any questions, any of us are happy to stand for those.
Thanks, Jill. Commissioners, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
None from me.
Yeah, I'd just like to hear a little bit from Scott and Stephanie. You know, it sounds like you had some more conversations with staff and just get a sense from you all. I'd just like to just give you a chance to speak a little bit on this, I suppose.
I'll start. So I'm Scott Creaky. I'm the interim executive director for Trinity and Home Care. Thanks for hearing this request. I think what was decided upon, and I think it was a good decision, was that it was a substantial request at the end of the process. And there was a lot of information that needed to be gathered and processed and sorted, and there wasn't just the time to do that. I think still, it's my hope that we would continue the conversation so we can have more, like, put Trinity in a place that we can serve the community better and become more stable over the time and serve more people. And that's what our goals are, and that will always be. But I don't know if this was the right timing for it, but at least the needs are out there and we can continue the conversation.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Wilson. I'm the president of the Board of Trinity, and I echo everything that Scott said. The only thing I would add is just we appreciate all the help that you've given us so much. So thank you.
And I'll say we're going to continue to work with Trinity on, you know, with the Human Services Hub, and make sure that we're, you know, responding to when they're ready to make that transition, and how we can make sure that that transition happens in a way that makes sense from where they're located, and how we can just continue to utilize that location and Trinity's being there with some of the other providers that are located there. So that'll be an ongoing effort as well that I'm excited about.
And this is Sarah. I guess I would add too, just in two pieces. One, given that, you know, Trinity made a request for the 2021 budget in that amount, I think Scott's right. The timing's a little difficult. You know, it would be difficult for, I think, the commission to consider a larger request than what was submitted for 2021 out of sort of fairness to the process and what others were able to submit at that time. But agree with everyone involved that we will continue conversations with Trinity, and specifically, you know, I think we need to talk with our network of human service providers about how critical this service is to the community and how reliant other human service providers are onto this service, and what can we do as a community to really strengthen that network. Are there some other things that can be looked at? I'm always impressed with the creative power of this group of individuals when they put their mind to it. So I think this is not the last conversation we will be continuing to have about these particular needs in the community.
Thank you all. I mean, I guess Sarah sort of hit on what I was hoping for, is sort of reinforcing that this conversation isn't done, because I think the services that Trinity provides are so critical to all of our human services in Douglas County, and we need to work together. It's a net, it's a web, and we need to work together to continue to provide those services for the most vulnerable in our community. So thank you, Scott and Stephanie, for all that you're doing, and thanks for working with us on this and sharing with us a couple of weeks ago the incredible need that is there with Trinity. So appreciate that. Open this up for public comment. Is there anybody who would like to provide public comment on this item?
We don't have anyone here at the courthouse.
And I'm not seeing anybody online.
to apologize. I think my internet is bouncing in and out. So if I missed something, I think Jill said no. So I would take a motion, commissioners, on this item if someone wanted.
I'd be happy to make the motion to approve a community partner agreement and request from Trinity In-Home Care for an additional $30,000 operating support in fiscal year 2021 for a total annual commitment of $90,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 3-0.
And real quick, Scott and Stephanie, while I have you here, because this might be the last time I get a chance to address you in this venue, I was really happy to hear what Jill and Sarah and Patrick said, because it was what I was going to say, is that the county and the community understand that you provide a vital service to our community members, and I know that there are options and there are opportunities out there, and so I'm really glad to hear that this conversation is going to continue, and because I mean, I know that we all realize how important it is what you do. So please keep up the good work. I know it's been a tough year, and but I do appreciate everything that you do.
And I'll just chime in and say, echo all of that, but I would say, I don't think the community does know what Trinity In-Home Care is or what they do. I think it's a little known, gem doing some of the most important work there is in the community with very little resources and really very little support. And I'm proud that the county has come up with extra dollars from time to time, but I think it's absolutely imperative that you all keep working with the county and other governmental entities in the community and the public to elevate your name so that you all are just as known as Just Food and some of the other great organizations. And it's too important a service that you offer for it to be kind of iffy every year. So thanks for hanging in there, and I hope I hear your name more and more and more.
Okay, we'll move on to our third item on our agenda, which is Douglas County CARES Act funding contingency options, and we'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you, commissioners, and Brooke Sauer with the administration team is going to be joining this conversation as well. I do apologize for the late additions to your agenda packet on these items. As the commission knows, we're working really closely with our over 60 community partners to identify if they have if they have funds available that they will not be using. And if so, then how we can repurpose them. Just as a reminder for folks paying attention to this conversation, the county received round one funds for CARES Act dollars, and with a very strict timeline that all funds must be expended by 12/31 of 2020. So we've been working through the plan that was approved in September to work with our community partners to get those spent. And I thought how we might start with this is to have Brooke kind of go, you all have seen the monthly reports on the distribution of direct aid funds, and for this story and these charts change every minute of every day at this point in terms of whether or not somebody has expended the funds. And oftentimes there's a story behind a zero distribution where we are very convinced that organization will expend those funds on time. So I guess I wanted to turn it briefly over to Brooke to kind of review the highlights of where we're at in the distribution process and just see if commissioners had any questions on that.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, commissioners. The first table that I'll draw your attention to is the distributions that have been made to agencies so far. So right now we're at about $14.5 million distributed. The agencies who have funds sent to them by the county have met reporting requirements, and they are eligible to receive additional distributions each time they meet those reporting requirements. So there's not a whole lot to really talk about when it comes to that table, because I think the most important part here is whether the funds are being spent. So the second table are the Douglas County Report of Expenditures through November 30th. One of the things that is not really representative on this table is that the county sets a deadline for these agencies to report their expenditures to me, and that is set for Monday, December 7th, because I have to then report that to the state by the 10th. So there are some expenditures that are not noted on this table. As a matter of fact, right before this meeting, I had $500,000 reported to me. So I am getting reports, multiple reports on a daily basis. So please keep that in mind as you're kind of going through some of these programs too. Another thing that I wanted to let you guys know just briefly is that a few weeks back, I reached out to the agencies who had either not reported anything to me or had reported under 60% of their funds expended. I just sent them a quick little note and asked them for an update of where they were at in expenditures, maybe why they hadn't reported anything to me. And I got an overwhelming response from those agencies, and they expressed their intent and their guarantee that they had in fact spent some of the money, most of the money, or they will spend most of their money by the end of the performance period, which we all know is coming up this month. LMH is one of those agencies. I know, you know, looking at this table, there's a lot of zeros there. But, you know, I'm very confident they're spending this money. And I think we can see that in the community too, with the testing events and things that they're doing there at the hospital. I forgot to put the total line on that expenditures table. So right now we're at $8.7 million for expenditures reported for this period so far, but I expect that number to go up significantly when we get all the reports in for that reporting deadline. Does the commission have any question about those two tables, or any questions just in general that I could answer?
Well, then we can move along if commissioners don't have any particular questions on that item. I do want to point out, as you move through that attachment that's in your agenda packet, a part of the county allocation was for assisted living and residential healthcare facility programs. To date, only 4 agencies have met the funding requirements of that program, so that's going to impact the Douglas County allocation of that. And funds were allocated to facilities based on the number of licensed beds at the facility. So we included some information on that. The next table you have is on program transfers. So as we discussed when we approved this program back in September, the commission gave me the authority to make some program transfers as appropriate to help keep funds moving through the community and reassign them where we needed to. So as what you see on that chart are the program transfers that have been approved to date and who they went to. So Brooke has included a nice little debit and credit column for us that all match up. That you know, the United Way was not able to use all of their funds for community resource navigators, so that was reallocated towards tenants to homeowners and family promise for rental assistance. And then you go down, Child Care Aware was not able, and really those organizations suggested how those transfers should go and where that transfer should be done to. I have approved those as they have come through the process to keep that moving. What you see after that on the table is a requested program transfer from the city of Eudora. And I was not comfortable making this program transfer, and I wanted to bring it to the commission for consideration, and specifically because, you know, the amount of funds that were allocated for the city of Eudora that were not spent were somewhat substantial, And the request was to move those funds into an additional, a new program area that was not a part of our original approvals, which would be to purchase radio equipment for the city of Eudora. We have checked with the state. Radio expenses, radio replacements are an eligible expense. However, it was not a part of our original program plan to purchase radios. And I know we have a number of community partner organizations, including Douglas County, that have substantial radio needs. And since we had not included radios at any point in time in this process, I felt uncomfortable making that decision to reallocate. So you have a table there that shows what the request from the city of Eudora would be to do that. If the commission was not comfortable with reallocating that request to radios as proposed by the city of Eudora, I believe they have some contingency ideas of other ideas of how it could be spent, or the commission could make a decision to do something different with that. And we do have a few representatives from the city of Eudora, so if you want some more specific questions, we could have them address that. I will say too, and I probably should have started off with this opener. You know, I know we talked a lot about our hope would be that all the decisions would be made tonight and that we wouldn't necessarily be back to have this conversation again throughout December. I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that. You know, we are really trying. I think that we're going to learn more after that reporting period from Brooke. Additional funds might become available that could be available to use. I know we're working with our Douglas County funds to try to figure out exactly how many of them we don't need anymore. So I do anticipate this might be back on your agenda again on the 9th and possibly the 16th if necessary to make those final allocations. So I do want commissioners to understand that this isn't the last time you're going to have a chance to talk about it. But it would be great if we could get some decisions on the funds we do know that right now we have available to reallocate, and then we'll just bring them back to you as we learn more. Does that make sense? So I guess I don't want to pressure you into a decision that the commission's not ready to make as for all of these funds, and then also for the city of Eudora request for the transfer for radios or for other uses. So is there any desire to stop here and take some questions before we talk specifically about the requests for additional funds and what's available? Or to specifically hear from Eudora and their program transfer request?
I guess I'd be interested in hearing briefly from Eudora on what their other thoughts are, because frankly, I'm as much as I love Eudora and try to help their desires come through the county commission. I kind of share your concern, Sarah, that funding permanent infrastructure for for fire and medical radios and while it's eligible, we really did set out to do COVID related kind of emergency funding, and that seems outside of the kind of the original desire of or the scope of what we were intending. So I'd be interested in hearing what other thoughts are from Eudora.
I would too.
Who do we have from Eudora? Who's going to join us?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can you hear us?
Yep, go ahead, Barack.
Hi, Barack Matida, City Manager, and I'm here with Jeff Rhodes, and Jeff has been working with Brooke to, spearhead this program, and I'd probably, call on him to, say a few words, but he's been working with Brooke with the amendments that we've submitted to the county and was for consideration for you tonight. But for us, we are very grateful with the allocation that we received. And from the allocation that we received, we had two major programs that we worked diligently to, one, provide the small business grant for the small businesses, and that has been allocated 100%. and also for our utility assistance program. We received over 200 applications, and we were able to provide, we received about, we received 163,000, and we were able to allocate about 101,000. That's going to help over 200 residents to help them pay their utilities, some up to 2 to 3 months of the utility bill. And also what the funding that we received, that we had requested to the county, was the community Wi-Fi, which is a distance learning program that we are working with a company called QuickCom. And this was to essentially provide service to all of the unincorporated areas outside the city limits, but within the Eudora School District. In us working with this company, they essentially told us that they will not, because of the strict deadline and when they'll be able to do the installation and do what's required, the engineering and everything else to install and sign everybody up, they will not be able to meet the December 30th deadline. So that was the key driver of us, stepping back and having a conversation about what do we need to do, because they essentially say they will not be able to meet that deadline. And the deadline that that we have, everybody knows that it's too short. So with that, we as a team, we sat back and say, okay, what else is it, do we have to consider that's a priority, not only for the organization, but for the community as a whole? And for us, the communication conversation that we've been having with all of our fire chiefs and police chief as well is public safety is a key thing. How will they be able to respond in this time of need? And given the changes that have been happening, they do need some upgrades in their radio just because of the transition that has happened. So looking at everything else that we had as a priority, and we're looking at not only what will help us through this pandemic, but also any other pandemic that will happen beyond beyond December 31st. We looked at what is eligible and what can be funded and what will help the city of Eudora and the community of Eudora as a whole. So we say, okay, let's go ahead and prioritize what's needed. And that's what we looked at, and what we've submitted to you as a request is what we felt as an organization, as a community, we wanted to be able to prioritize that, because without that, we will not be able to respond to the needs that we know that many in our community, will be able to, to need. And we know we are looking at something that, will not only help us during this pandemic, but beyond this pandemic, because who knows what will happen after December 31st. There might be issues, beyond this, beyond December 31st that will require our public safety officials to, to respond to, and we will not be able to, to do that with all of the upgrades that they need to do, that especially it's being mandated from the state. So for us, the conversation that we had is this an eligible thing that we could be able to pursue using the CARES Act funding? And that's the research that we did, and talking to Brooke, and she reached out to the state, and given the conversation and what we found out from the federal government to the state, this is an eligible expense. And even though we understand where the county's intents were, this is a need that we need, as an organization in our community. And that's why we put forth what we put forth as a request as far as an amendment.
So Brock, I'll just ask really quickly. So if you don't receive the money for this upgrade in radios, is it included in your budget, your CIP, or future plans for you to upgrade your equipment?
Now, all
Did you say no?
Now, all this, given, and the chiefs can be able to speak to this, I believe there was a mandate or a change that was either came from the state or from the county, where the radios were being encrypted, and all those radios, the current radios that we have, will all be phased out. So we did not have it in our budget, nor did we have it in our plan to be able to acquire anything within the next year. So in our 2021 budget, we don't have radios included as you know, as an acquisition that we have to make. So it's something that was just dropped in our lap. And if we don't have that, given how much money we have limited resources, and being told to you know, change what we have all at once, we will not be able to do that all at once. And how we've always acquired our assets is, you know, how can we phase what we have? And what will end up happening is, you know, with limited resources that we have, we'll have to buy some at a time, and then we might end up, you know, having, you know, officers or, you know, public safety officials not having the same type of radios to respond to public health calls.
This is Sarah, and just as a little additional background on a radio conversion, you know, this is a topic that's been discussed at some level in different organizations throughout law enforcement and fire and medical dispatch over the last couple years. I think you know, there is some urgency to begin this process of radio replacement. However, it is not, you know, I can tell you Douglas County will not be in a position to replace all of its radios in the first year of 2021. And we are looking to build a radio replacement program over the next few years to begin that process to do radio replacement for the organization as well. So I know LDCFM, you know, the county remembers, as a part of our capital improvement plan for 2021 for LDCFM, there was a radio conversion project outlined in that, and that was funded. And then my plan was to bring to you requests and a plan for how that replacement would work for emergency communications, emergency management, the sheriff's office, as well as other radio partners in 21 to begin that process or continue that process of upgrade and replacement. You know, radios always, they have a limited lifespan. They always, you know, they need to be replaced from time to time. And it's, you know, I think you're going to hear that from a number of government organizations in this community over the next couple of years, that we're all going to embark upon that work. So.
Thanks, Sarah. That's helpful background. I really appreciate it.
So if there's nothing else from Eudora, Sarah, where did you think we would want to pick it up after that? I think you were going somewhere, and then we decided to take some communication from Eudora.
Well, at some point, I think we will need direction on if we are going to, if we are going to approve the program transfer request for Eudora, or if not, if there's concern about radios, if there was another use that Eudora was going to propose, or if not, if those funds could be added to the program contingency dollars to be reallocated. I don't know that we need that decision tonight. We can ask Eudora to provide some additional information in writing if you want. It's really up to the commission as to how you want to handle it.
I guess.
Commissioners.
Go ahead.
So from Eudora's perspective, you know, we believe that you know, we are not asking the county commissioners to, you know, add any more funding to the programs that, you know, we had proposed. We are looking at what was allocated to us, and as a community looking at, you know, what's a priority for us right now and in the future. And I'm hoping that the county commissioners will be able to look at, you know, Eudora's request from what's important and what Eudora has identified as something that's critical for the organization and for our community, given all of the needs that we have and given everything that we had outlined as important and as a priority for us and our residents. And at least hope that that lens would be able to, you know, lead you all to at least say yes, because in what we presented to you, we believe that we know and we understand that There's so many needs out there, and one of the last things that we not appreciate is if, let's say, the funds that were allocated to us were shifted to something else, and or we would be forced to spend money on something else other than what's our top priority. That's what I'd probably just add to my previous comments.
If the commissioners would like, more time to think about that, or perhaps in the context of the requests, I would add that, if you go to the next column down on the attachment in terms of the program contingency dollars, what you will see is that both Douglas County and the city of Lawrence are returning significant amounts of the funds that were initially allocated to them that they were not able to spend as originally allocated. So I just want to present that context to the commission. When we did the original allocations, those were not set in stone. And in many cases, those have been modified as we've moved through this process. And specifically in terms of this, you've got two organizations, two municipal organizations that are going to be returning funds to be reallocated back to the community. And like I said, the initial number here on the program contingency dollars for Douglas County, this is I anticipate that we will have more dollars to reallocate. Brooke and I are frantically trying to get with all of our departmental partners to make sure we have the amount right. So this is the minimum I think we can reallocate from Douglas County, the $160,000. My hope and my belief is that I will be back next week with additional funds that can also be reallocated above that. Are the commissioners following along as to where I'm seeing that on the packet? I want to make sure I'm not going too far ahead of everybody. So I guess with that, in addition, in your packet as well was, we reached out to, I had Brooke reached out to all of our partners who already had signed agreements. And, I think that's important to stress at this point. The deadlines and timelines for the expenditure of these funds and the policies and agreements that have to be in place by the federal government to make sure that these funds are spread appropriately take a substantial period of time. It's now December 2nd. So we felt we could not reach out to the general public again for additional thoughts on how funds could be reallocated because of the timelines associated with being prepared to spend these dollars. When we reached out to them as to which organizations might be able to use additional funds and move them into the community faster, you have an attachment that outlines those requests. It's in the separate sheet, and it's approximately about 25 of our partners have requested additional funds. And I just want to stop there and see if you have any questions about those requests or for Brooke or I in this process, specifically related to those. Commissioner Kelly, I'm worried that you're lagging. So if you could let me know that if you have questions or not, I'd appreciate it.
I apologize. My internet is just really spotty here tonight. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah, I did have sort of a question. We authorized you to reallocate and you've done some reallocation, some transfers already. And help me understand why we would go away from that process moving forward. Wouldn't we just continue to transfer dollars to programs we thought that you thought were better? Am I making sense here? Why would we just not continue that? Why would we sort of create a new process?
I appreciate that. And I guess just because of the unprecedented nature of this amount of federal funds into our community, and I wanted to provide one last opportunity of a report of if the commission had strong thoughts on how to do this. that we would be, that I want to be open to where the commission wants to head on this. On these, on the ones that you saw on the initial program transfers, with the exception of the child care aware amount, they were pretty small amounts. And they really were, in some cases, directly, that organization said, I know this organization is now in partnership with us and they're working on this piece, like specifically with the Art Center and the Douglas County Historical Society. Those two projects are really closely linked. So there was no real decision-making on my part. That was just to further the mission of what that program had originally outlined. You know, I do think with the child care aware situation and that amount unspent, we were notified by tenants to homeowners and Family Promise that their funds ran out in November. There was just really an unprecedented need for that program. I think far above perhaps even what tenants to homeowners and Family Promise anticipated. And so when Brooke spoke to Child Care Aware, they talked about how their families were using that program, and how important that might be a better place for those families is to use that program. So I did make that call to move it quickly on that one. We could continue with that, but I guess, and I'm totally comfortable with that, but I just wanted to provide the commissioners with an opportunity, you know, if with this big last part of it, if there were some thoughts as to how that should be done.
I guess I'd like to chime in and say I'm really happy for this opportunity to be able to express an opinion, at least, on the reallocation of these dollars, largely because it was the commission that kind of, obviously with your help, Sarah and Brooke and other staff, you know, but we really kind of went through all of this in great detail and tried to set out a way to spend the money equitably across the community. And I think it's appropriate for the commission to kind of keep bearing that responsibility even to the end, as we look to you all for a lot of guidance. I would just say, for my part, I think the original spirit of this was to see these funds as kind of for urgent needs, for COVID-related urgent needs. And so a lot of it is, you know, I look at some of these, you know, organizations, if they're government entities, their doors are not going to close. Their ability to raise funds will remain. I think we have some organizations waiting on us whose doors will close, whose employees are hanging on by a thread, and our local economy, you know, is already taking a hit, substantial hit from the loss of our ability to have our businesses be open, and our ability to have visitors come to our community, and to have the events that bring people here and spend money here. And so I guess I'd like to make the case for you know, as much as I am reluctant to say it, especially while the Eudora city manager is watching, you know, I'd be very tempted to sweep those funds into the larger pool of dollars and really hunker down tonight to try and get some money into the hands of organizations that are keeping people sheltered, them fed, and keeping a lot of employees barely employed, trying, you know, getting through this pandemic, and, you know, hopefully coming out on the other end still with a viable business and with employees, not, you know, not homeless, not depending on social services, but gainfully employed. So that's the case I'd like to make. It is not no ill will or no bad feelings toward the city of Eudora. I think the radios are needed, but it sounds like there's maybe a different way of going about, you know, that problem. through funds that will be there, or can be planned there. So I guess that's where I'd like to start the conversation with I'm sorry, Chairman Patrick Kelly, it's probably up to you to set that out there, but that's kind of where I am on this.
Well, and Commissioner Thurman, I'm thinking along the same lines as that you are. We put a lot of time and effort into this this process, and the whole idea was to meet as many organizations and people that are struggling suddenly through no fault of their own because of the COVID crisis, and trying to keep people fed and in their homes and in their businesses. And while I understand and appreciate the need for the radios, that seems to be an ongoing project that several of the governments are going to be facing over the next couple of years. And while it may be eligible, I don't see how. I think these funds can be spent for COVID crisis issues that our community is facing right now. And the radios will, like every other government and law enforcement or first responder agencies, is going to have to be dealt with through those normal channels and budgets and so forth. But this money is for people who are facing serious challenges and crises in their lives because of a pandemic that none of us, we had no idea. And that needs to be our focus as far as I'm concerned. So if it's great that they had so much success taking care of their community members with the funds that we had given them, but I think the extra now needs to go into helping other community members.
Yeah, my question to Sarah was just to clarify process more than anything, and so we were clear on why that was happening. I'm not compelled by the radios, to be honest.
I think we may have lost you, Commissioner Kelly.
I think he froze.
Sorry about that. So I don't know where I left off. So my question was about process. My question to Sarah was really about process, and I'm not compelled by the radios. I guess if we had done the cities like we did the school districts, I'd be more compelled, that we had given them a lump sum and said, based on, but then we would have done it by Eudora would probably have not gotten near the funds they would have gotten in the first place. So I think that's something just to keep in mind, that we were funding specific programs that Eudora was trying to do. I was really excited about the opportunity to expand Wi-Fi coverage out into, or internet coverage out into the unincorporated. For us to reallocate. I froze again, didn't I?
A little bit.
Yeah, so I'd like to sweep that money into an allocation. I wonder if we might take public comment. We've heard from Eudora, and I see we have some other people on the call, and it looks like Sarah was mentioning that we might have somebody there at the courthouse who wants to provide comment, and then we can further our discussion after that. I froze again, didn't I?
Just briefly, but yes, I do have someone here at the courthouse for public comment at the courthouse if we want to start here. So you can come up and sit at the.
Hello. So Eric Hyde. So I used to be a paramedic. I graduated from Johnson County Community College, same program that a lot of people in Lawrence or firefighters, paramedics, or medics went to. They taught us the ills of tunnel vision. And I'm noticing by the words I'm hearing that there's tunnel vision on these rock star celebrity agencies in the county. For CARES Act funds distribution, it's okay. But in need of more scope and application to other less known considered organizations in this county. Like it's gonna help broaden the options so we don't end up with a monopolization of federal government funds to entities when we're really just trying to help the people during this time of this illness. These federal funds are being distributed for entities that operate in a box. And we have to be careful because they can't do everything. They can only do so much. We have to be careful not to overlook the public and the community by serving these box organizations. And that's all I have to say concerning this agenda.
Is there anyone online who'd like to provide public comment on this item? I see the city of Eudora has their hand raised.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay.
Oh, well, sorry, I apologize. Emily Peterson. So let me.
Yeah, let's have Emily address the commission. Move her over, please.
Nope. Emily, go ahead. You can unmute and go for it.
Hi there. I'm Emily Peterson. I'm joining on behalf of the Lawrence Restaurant Association. And I just wanted to pop on. We made a request for some additional funding to see if there were any questions about that request or anything I could do to provide some more information.
So Emily, you've already got a process that is well underway. It sounded to me like you have not had not just a first round, but so a second round of funding complete or nearly completed. So when your organization receives more money, you'll be ready to distribute it very, very quickly. You have knowledge that there are other organizations that would be ready to apply for your funds quickly?
Yeah, we do. We intentionally structured our grant program in 2 phases so that we could make sure that every business owner, the hospitality business owner in Douglas County that qualified could access the funds. So the first round of funding was specifically to reimburse COVID-related expenses for businesses that were operating, that needed the masks and the gloves and the partitions. And so we distributed about $670,000 through that first round of funding. And so we have about 900 and change remaining that we're distributing through our second round, which is based on business disruption. And we structured that second round to basically allow both businesses that had been in operation from 2019 to now, and then also from 2020 to now, to be able to access business disruption funding. And we based that just on 4 months, April through July. And we did that because we had county tax information available for those months. So anybody that didn't have the year-over-year financials to demonstrate, the tremendous effect that COVID has had on their business, we could apply county tax information to kind of extrapolate for some of the new businesses that opened. We have businesses that opened in February and March of 2020 that are just doing everything they can to hang on. So all that to say, for those 4 months that we determined the business disruption period, the average disruption that businesses have experienced is 60%. For hospitality businesses, if you know anything about what we do, we operate on razor thin margins. And so 60%, it's a miracle many of us continue to hang on, but we are doing everything that we can to, pivot and optimize what we're offering to respond to the current climate. And in that, all of that funding, we have about 100 applicants for round 2, which is up from round 1 and represents about 50% of the eligible hospitality businesses. So we've got great community engagement. We're having a very large reach across hospitality. And we're hoping to get additional funding to distribute through that business disruption round 2. So right now with the 100 businesses for that 4-month period, which again is just a snapshot of the pandemic at this point, we're going on 9 months, we are able to fund about 5% business disruption, which is something, and something that we're very grateful for. But as we face the rise in COVID cases that we've seen locally, the winter that we know is going to be much harder on our businesses who, many of us have adapted with outdoor dining, and that's not going to be a realistic venture for very much longer. Any percent that we can increase that business disruption that we're providing will help people hang on. So with the additional 800,000 that we've requested, we should be able to take people from about 5% to close to 10%, which again is funding that we desperately need to make it through these very difficult months.
Thanks so much, and I apologize for the tour of the house while I was searching for my charger. So I just want to extend thanks to you and your organization. I know you're holding up an awful lot of folks through pretty desperate times, and so thank you.
Emily, I'd just add thanks for taking a sort of a data-driven approach to that. Looking back at tax records seems incredibly responsible with the dollars that was allocated. I was going to ask you about PPP money, but I know that 5%, that's not anything close to that. So I get it. You all did really well, with the dollars that we allocated and being thoughtful about how to distribute that. So grateful for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Emily? Eudora has its hand raised. We should probably hear from them again.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Emily.
Barack, City Manager of Eudora. I will say that we do have a contingency plan to spend the money that we had allocated. We had talked about reallocating. So we do have a spending plan on what to do with those funds, and we do have the priority one with the radios, but we do have a plan what to do with those funds, and we had shared that with Brooke and Sarah. It's not to say that if the commissioner says, say no to the radios, that we will not be able to spend the money here in Eudora. We do have programs here in Eudora in ways that we could be able to expend those funds by the deadline that's been set out by the state.
And I apologize. I don't believe that came through, I think, just today, Barack. And, I don't know that it got into the commission's packet, if this is sort of a subsequent plan to the radio plan. I'm trying to find it in my email. It's just, like I said, we're working pretty fast on this. So if the commission wants to see that, we can add that to an agenda item for next week, if that's what the commission wants to do.
Obviously, our preference would be to, for the commissioners to allow us to spend the money that was allocated, to Eudora, because we do have needs here in Eudora, and we do have plans to spend that money here in various programs if the radios are not approved by the county commissioners.
Thanks, Brock. Appreciate that. Bring it back up to the commission here. how would we like to move forward? I get a little nervous. This is just me. Allocating funds when we don't know how much we have to allocate. That makes me a little, and I'm with you. I'd like to dig in and get these dollars out the door. But Sarah, is your recommendation that we start with the 500,000 and where we think that would, and then if we have more than that down the road, that we just essentially each week look at what we have and go to our next most important thing, I suppose.
Yeah, and commissioners, thank you. And I do, like I said in the beginning, I am sorry. This is just such a difficult process in terms of trying to get these funds out the door. But I would recommend that if we could get direction from the commission tonight, how to allocate the existing funds that have been targeted for contingency funding to be reallocated, that would be a great first step. Like I said, I think that we will bring back additional information about Douglas County. We can bring back information on Eudora if that's what the commission wishes for next week. So you could see that if it isn't radios, what their program, and then we can have this representatives from the city of Eudora here to ask questions about it. Like I said, the closer and closer we get to this deadline, the harder and harder it's going to be to get these funds out. So my real hope is that it's really just this week and next week. I think by the 16th, it will probably be too late. And like Brooke said, she's going to get more full reporting from folks. And so, I think if we could have a decision on what we have in front of us now, and then we will bring more to you next week.
So I need to ask for your indulgence for about 30 seconds while I go get my notebook. It's in the other room, but I'll be right back. Are we paused for?
We were waiting for you to get your notebook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're back.
I'm back. Thank you. You
never know what we're paused for tonight. This could be.
Well, so my commissioner colleagues, do you think we should just throw out what our preferences would be? I have my list of preferences and some possible numbers, and I'm happy to start off. I started not with the 507, but by sweeping the 153 from Eudora and putting it in the pool. But that may be too aggressive. Maybe we need to let Eudora make their case for something else. I just feel like it's urgent that we get this money out the door so people can actually spend it down for the urgent purposes it was meant for. So I'll start so that, and you all feel free to take it any direction you want. But I really thought, when I thought about it, those programs that were job related, economy related, kind of life related, as in food and housing, those were the ones that really struck me as urgently needed, and ones that could that are ready to spend the money. So I looked at Peasley as a place that is very equitably and capably getting people trained and getting them living wage jobs in a hurry. And I won't say funding amounts now, but the organizations I thought would be great if we could support in this extra round. So Peasley and Just Food, their expenses have been phenomenal, and that's just the most basic need there is. Lawrence Live and LRA may not be the most obvious organizations, but they are integral to kind of the heart of our local economy in their ability to keep a lot of people hired, but also bring a lot of people here with a lot of money. And I know that Lawrence Live those folks are hanging on by a thread, and they are on life support. And if they go under while they're waiting for hopefully some federal stimulus dollars, they may never come back, and I think we'll be in, I think we will have a great sense of remorse having had the chance to try and help them along in this time and miss that opportunity. I would hope we wouldn't come to that conclusion too late. And LRA, many employees count on those businesses to be open, and our local economy counts on those businesses as well. Tenants to homeowners, certainly for all of the work they're doing, housing, hundreds and hundreds of folks, getting them under roofs in a hurry. So, and I thought as an afterthought, the Lawrence Public Library, just in the population it serves, but I had some figures down that by the time those first 5 and then adding LPL, that came to about $682,000. So within the amount of money that we would have to work with, that's not meeting everybody's needs by any means, but partial funding of most of these requests, I think, would make a difference. So that's me. I'm happy to tell you my numbers, or if you want to, add your thoughts, and then we can get into the weeds.
Yeah, so maybe I'll jump in next. Many of yours, Commissioner Thellman, were similar to mine. Just Food was very high on my, we've just seen such a high demand. I did started when I went through it to look at those that we completely funded versus those we partially funded. That was one thing I was sort of playing with is, and so you mentioned Lawrence Live, and that was one that asked for, I believe it may have been 500,000 and we gave 300. I don't have the numbers exactly, but I was sort of looking at, and the restaurant, so, those were some of, if I remember our conversations early on when it came to economic development, we did not fund them to the maximum amount that they requested. And I think those businesses were really looking at, how can they survive through December 31st? And we sort of said, well, we'll provide the support you need through October. That's sort of the way it felt to me. So that was one as I was going through them. Now, I think there are a few that I would argue maybe are really, really high, and why we might want to, it was 726,000 for Explore Lawrence. And that one was one that jumped out to me. It's like, okay. And so balancing that, I think, is going to be a little bit tricky if I follow my plan of looking at those organizations that we didn't fund for the first go around. But Peasley Tech, as you mentioned, was another one. We didn't fully fund the first, I think they asked for 400,000 and we gave them 200,000. So a lot of the ones that you're saying are right there. And then some of the others that I was emphasizing, tenants to homeowners, it seems like the demand is just so high. Same with Just Food. The demand is just so high in those areas. I really wish we had another stimulus package coming our way to really help both our businesses and our folks who are unemployed and having a hard time paying their rent and getting food. So a lot of yours are in the same line as mine. I think it would be great to hear from Commissioner DeRusso, and then maybe we can sort of talk about numbers. We may not be able to do the total numbers. But while I appreciate those that were asking for infrastructure changes or remodeling or things like that, I think we're really thinking of getting it out the door. We're looking for those who have their hand out because they're going to spend it right away. And I guess that's maybe a crude way of putting it, but that is what I'm looking for.
Well, I think we're all on similar thought process here. Where, I know the need is everywhere, but how quickly it can be spent, and some of these, like, okay, so just food and tenants to homeowners, I mean, that need is just going to keep coming and keep coming. So I had Peasley, to some extent, just food, the Humane Society, tenants to homeowners, LRA. And I didn't put any amounts with it. Those were ones that I just kind of wanted to discuss and see where we were, and then what's available after that.
So, commissioners, I apologize. There's some background noise. I think the question becomes if we're talking about the $528,971.52 that we've identified so far tonight, I guess, that's those asks are pretty large. So in terms of particularly with the LRA request being at around 800,000, if I'm reading that correctly. Brooke, am I reading that correctly? So I guess I'd want to know if, is it your thought to just sort of distribute it equally between a certain group, or to fully fund some people and not others, and then kind of what levels you want to be at?
So I'm happy to just start the conversation. I think everything I'm looking at is partial funding, except for just food and tenants to homeowners. So again, the numbers I'm working with, and the idea I had was that to spend everything we could tonight, just so we have the best chance at getting it spent down. And if there's another chance at more reallocation next week, that's great. But I thought this week, my first thought was, working with, if you add the Eudora money to the $528,000, it becomes a little over $682,000 to work with. So my first thought was 50,000 to Peasley, 100,000 to Just Food, 100,000 to Lawrence Live, $350,000 to LRA, 75 to tenants to homeowners. And I had, that leaves just a little bit. I actually had the Humane Society in there, and I'd be happy to add them in and adjust some numbers. I had Lawrence Public Library in for their 12, but I mean, so I'm super happy to negotiate. I think Lawrence Life could use way more than that. I think LRA could use way more than that, but I think that's a good start, at least. So.
Okay. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't get amounts on all of them. I wanted to fund Just Food, Humane Society, and tenants to homeowners, their full request, which is 185. And then I realize the need for LRA and Lawrence Live, but I wasn't sure what would be left over and how we could, what we would be able to give them. So I'm flexible from there, but I think that those, I would like to see those three fully funded, Just Food, Humane Society, and Tenants to Homeowners. I know they can get it spent. I know the need is there, and they're not gonna have any trouble meeting their deadline.
So I'm supportive of Tenants to Homeowners, Humane Society, and Just Food. And we said that's 185, right?
Mhm.
Okay. By Commissioner Thelman's count, we had 620. So that leaves a remaining 430.
682.
682, sorry.
But that includes Eudora, right?
Correct.
But didn't Eudora say that they had a backup plan or something for that was?
They do have a backup plan if the radios were not improved. I prefer, if you want to consider it, that we put that on next week's agenda. I can try to read it to you quickly. I just am nervous about.
Well, no, I'm just curious, is it COVID related? I mean, that's.
I think it is COVID related. However, I think there are some questions about how quickly some of these programs could be spent. And
Is it just part of the setting up the engineering of the Wi-Fi and the water tower? Is that, did I miss it?
No, I think the intent of, if they were not able to, and I'm trying to pull it up here now from Brooke, would be to open up their utility assistance program for one more month, which they would need to move quickly on. Reopen or expand their small business program to include nonprofits, fully fund their original request for fire and EMS, cover payroll expenses, which I will remind commissioners that we have not covered elsewhere in the plan, and then create a new childcare reimbursement for staff as well. So that was their plan if the radios were not approved. But I guess if the commission would like to see that more fully, I'd like to give you time to do that. The question just becomes, should we just allocate the 528 tonight and come back on that? Or if you're comfortable with where you're headed here towards the 682, we can just proceed.
I guess my question would be why wasn't the utility assistance program left open?
I'd have to ask the city of Eudora. I think their intent was that, they opened it up and closed it and they could open it back up again. We could ask them to come back and join into public comment again, if that's what the commission wants. I would say, and if the thought is to try to get it all done tonight, the county will come back to you next week, because I know we will have additional funds. I am just not able to identify them at this point. So I appreciate the desire for the commission to get it all done tonight, and I would love it too. I know Brooks would love it as well, but we will talk about this next week, because I have a strong sense that there's additional funds in the county's allocation that we will not spend. I don't think it's a huge amount. I think it's a small amount. But I think there are additional dollars to allocate next week, regardless of what happens with Eudora.
So while my camera's been on pause, I've been doing some crazy math as fast as I could. So making the best of the time. And so I'm just going to toss out an idea, which is if we took Lawrence Live and LRA and we combine them, that's $1 million right there. And if we took the remaining, if we said that one was 20% and one was 80%, you're following my thinking here. And then we took the remaining, and I just said for ballpark 500,000, knowing that we're probably going to need to be here. So I took the 185 out of 500,000 and ended up with 315,000. And I just split that between Lawrence Live and LRA based on the percentages that they asked for. So that would end up with Lawrence Live getting 63,000 and the Restaurant Association 252. I will tell you, if we have more money, Peaslee is the next place I'd like to go. So I think we may increase what we do for LRA and Lawrence Live, but that may be next week. So that was just, I just throw that out as another way of thinking about it. As, you know, I have a hard time deciding which employee support which employees need it more. I mean, you know, whether it's the entertainment industry or the hospitality industry. So there's just some ideas for us to consider to talk about.
Well, I think that's a reasonable split. I don't think there's any way we're ever probably going to be able to fund LRA entirely and as much as they need it. I would say though that to wait on Peaslee means that it will be that much harder for Kevin Kelly to get people into the program in a way that he can actually spend that down by the end of the year. So here is one suggestion on how to try and honor our funding commitment to Eudora in terms of what they have done. Their utility assistance, I think we gave them 60,000. They spent, well, seems like I'm wondering if we let about $30,000 remain in the Eudora fund and swept 120 out approximately, then that would give us money to take care of a little more LRA, Lawrence Live, tenants to homeowners, Just Food, and get Peaslee in there too, so that Kevin has time, another whole week to get more people signed up. I can't do those numbers quite in my head, but if we have 30,000.
Yeah, I agree that timing for Peaslee, one more week could probably help him out tremendously.
Yeah.
So if we took 120, I think that's what I heard you say, Commissioner Thelman. That gives us 385. Now I'm already saying that we've done Humane Society, we've done Just Food, and we've done tenants to homeowners there, right? That gives us a remainder of 385. Then I took 50,000 now, which is what your recommendation was for Peaslee Tech. That gives us 385 that we could split across Lawrence Live and LRA. Did that all make sense?
Brooke, are you tracking the math for me here?
Yeah, that doesn't seem like enough.
Yeah, I had 100,000 for. I thought Commissioner Thomson said add 120,000, so I gave the 100,000 to Peaslee and 8,000 to LRA and 2,000 to Lawrence Live, which I think comes up to 600.
So can I go back with my math, and Brooke, I'm going to look as I do this, and she's going to check my math. So if we start with the $528,971.52 that have already been allocated this meeting, that are available to be reallocated, we add, Eudora keeps 30,000 for its utility assistance program. So then
and small business, if they can spend $30,000 down on the two kind of programs they already have created,
So then our new total.
just not to tie their.
Okay. Our new total to work with to allocate is, and I'm doing the math too, but Brooke, if she's got it, I have $652,111.52.
Yes.
Are we all in agreement on that? Okay. And then, boy, this feels like budget, doesn't it, guys?
Yeah.
So then, 100,000 is allocated to just food. 75,000 is allocated to tenants to homeowners and Family Promise. 10,000 for the Lawrence Humane Society. That is minus 185. So we have a remainder of 400, right, Nancy? Am I okay? So we have a remainder now of $467,111.52. 50,000 for Peasley, correct?
Was it 50 or 100?
I had 100.
50.
Your ask was 100, but I had heard an offer to not fully fund Peasley. So that's what I wanted to clarify.
Okay.
I had suggested 50 just because I think the time is so short that.
I would agree with that, and we can revisit it next week if we have additional I mean, if Kevin tells us, look, I filled up those 10
Yeah.
spots in a week, let's do it again. We can revisit
Yeah.
another half.
So then I have that we have remaining to allocate between LRA and Lawrence Live, $417,111.52. Brooke is nodding yes. And that those would be distributed on an 80-20 percentage, with 80% going to LRA and 20% going to Lawrence Live. Is that the direction of the commission?
Could you repeat that? Just the last two numbers, please.
So there would be $417,111.52 to be split between Lawrence Restaurant Association and Lawrence Live on an 80-20 split. I have the first number of the 80-20 split for Lawrence Restaurant Association at $333,689.22. And then Brooke, do you have a Lawrence Live number for me?
Yes, 83,422.30.
How does that sound?
It sounds like a lot of extra complicated numbers, but I think the spirit is right. I would say that the 80-20 split is kind of arbitrary because Lawrence Live, you know, the amount they weren't allocated and the amount LRA wasn't allocated probably wasn't an 80-20 difference, but just in order to get, you know, move this along and get the money out the door, I can go with this. I think it would be great if there's more money next week that we can look more broadly and not close the door on more money for these organizations. But at least this is a start.
I'm comfortable with that. And just as a reminder, I mean, to all those groups that are listening, this feels a lot like what we did this summer, you know, I mean, and that there's really no way to make all these groups whole as we would really like to do. That's certainly a challenge, and to do what we can. I agree with you, Commissioner Thelman. I'd love for there to be more money so we can help more people. So, yeah.
If that's what the commission is interested in, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Dusser, I didn't want to jump in too soon there.
No, I was just going to say that I'm comfortable with those.
Okay, I think you just.
Yeah, sorry. I am comfortable with those amounts for those organizations.
Okay. So what Brooke and I can do is communicate with those organizations this initial funding amount, and we can type all of this up and have it in a document that the commission can review and also the public can review in terms of that And then we can gather more information, and you will have that in advance of next week's decisions in terms of where we're at. What I can have this piece in the packet. I think Brooke and I can get that together for early on to have in the packet for next week. I think my hope is it may be into next week before we have final numbers from all the organizations as to the total new amount to reallocate. And I'd encourage you to just understand that we've got, there's staff here that desperately want to use these funds. So they're working very hard to make sure that they can spend them. So they're a little reluctant to tell us, yeah, we've got extra money. So there's a lot of pushing and pulling on both ends. So does that sound like
To me, that sounds like a great plan. I am sorry for jumping in, Patrick. Hopefully as we get closer to the kind of drop dead date where there's really no time to reallocate and spend the money down, it would be great if next week was like the last chance to really, keep the money or give it back, because, we have so many ways it could be spent and spent down quickly. So will you be able to let these groups know, will this reallocation start tomorrow for these organizations?
Yes, and I think, Brooks here as well. I think we can tell the folks that have been identified so far what these allocations are. And we can tell them that as we think there'll be one more conversation about this as we identify one more set of funds for discussion on 12-9 in terms of if additional funds could be allocated to, say, like we said, if get information from Kevin in terms of what they can spend for Peasley. And obviously you have the request from Lawrence Live and Lawrence Restaurant Association.
So Sarah, you probably need some type of motion here to authorize or, yeah.
I think that.
So I'll make the motion to authorize the county administrator to execute a contingency plan for spending. Do you want the actual dollar amount here, Sarah?
I think as discussed, as discussed.
Okay, as discussed at our 12:02 county commission meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Passes 3-0.
Okay. So Peasley, Just Food, Humane Society, Tenants to Homeowners, LRA, and Lawrence Live.
Correct.
The amounts as discussed. Okay.
Commissioners, I would be remiss if I let this conversation end without thanking Brooke for all of her tremendous work on this project, and is constantly managing so many different groups and different partners, asking and pulling on so many different things. So I wanted to take this opportunity to publicly recognize her for her work.
Brooke's a rock star. I can't tell you. I hear Brooke's name more in the community than I've ever heard it before. Everyone knows Brooke Sauer now. Yeah.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thank you, commissioners. That was tough work to do, and appreciate our problem solving on that. Appointments, do we have any appointments to make? Okay, we'll move on to general public comment. General public comment is held at the end of each meeting with a limit of 1 comment per person. The commission reserves the right to place a time limit of 3 minutes per speaker if desired. Individuals may not give unused time to other speakers. As a general practice, the commission will not discuss or debate, nor will the commission make decisions on items presented during this time. Rather, they will refer the items to staff for follow-up if necessary. All comments should be directed to the county commission. Do we have anyone who'd like to provide general public comment?
Yes, commissioners, we have someone here at the courthouse to provide public comment.
Thanks. And Sarah, I'll just mention that if you are providing public comment, it should be not on an agenda item that we've already covered. This should be something separate to what we've already discussed.
Okay, as a member of the public, I reserve the right to comment on whatever I want to comment on. Okay. So. I'm gonna be nice now. Because what I'm hearing is pissing me off. Okay. I'll be nice. All right. So the Humane Society, those aren't people, those are animals. Okay. They're not members of the public. Okay. Main points, keep doing you. You guys are doing a good job, even though it sounds like I'm giving you a hard time, you're doing a good job. All right, but your next partner is the Masonic Order in this county. The main real estaters in this county, the construction firms, all the businesses that have vacant businesses in this county, especially in the city of Lawrence. You could even include KU Student Housing, which is an organization. They have vacant student housing during the winter months for the homeless. For this CARES Act distribution that you're talking about. I'm not looking to divide, I'm looking to unite together with our freedoms and independence and reimburse all who have things to do in this time of this illness. People who meet the adequate requirements for this fund distribution, which does not apply to merely organizations. Let's see here. You may think it does, but it doesn't. All right. Organizations are legal entities and are in no way, shape, or form are real. The public is real, not an imagined entity. You may walk up to a building and it says just food. That building is not just food. That building is full of people of the public. It's not just food. All right. Let's see here. Almost done. Okay, one thing I heard near the beginning, if prolonging homeless, this was during the work session, if prolonging homelessness and discrimination is costing Lawrence Community Shelter money, then we need to unite and program with real estaters, construction firms, the Masonic Order, I've already said that. So we can get people that are homeless housed in the winter cold during emergencies. And what you guys just talked about in the last agenda item doesn't apply to saving people's lives. It applies to entities. Okay. I have a Love Freedom Knowledge Foundation here in Lawrence. It's a nonprofit organization designed to save the world. You don't believe me, but it's true. Give me the money that you guys are desperately wanting to help. Either give me the money or let me volunteer for you for free so I can help you find places to get the money. I'm serious. That's about one last thing. Problems with expenditures from agencies are not going to happen with me. I'm going to help you find organizations. I'm going to help you find people for this money. That's all I really have written down. But guys, I mean, I'm really concerned. All this money is being divested to box organizations they're helping the community, but there's other ways to help the community other than the way that the money is being distributed. And I'm speaking this from my heart and I'm trying to help you guys. So please, I used to be a paramedic. I care about people. Anyway, I'm done.
Thank you. Looks like we might have someone online.
I'm not sure if Jill stepped away, so I can move over the first person. Eric, you've been added to the webinar and you can unmute yourself and speak.
Eric? Great.
Okay. I believe I'm on.
Yep.
I appreciate the county commissioners hosting the meeting and allowing people to join in. I want to thank employees such as Sarah Plinsky and Brooke for the tireless effort they give and rarely get rewarded and thanked. In fact, Sarah spent a long portion of a day while I was trying to pay my property taxes, listening to me just outside the building from my phone. Very kind of her to give me her time and her ear. She did try to even lead me to a solution. And since 4 o'clock and listening to Renee and all the great work, I've heard her talk before, and I know what she's doing for the community is just wonderful. And I like a lot of the heart-wrenching positive stories I've heard of tonight. I know that you just said don't talk about previous things. Some of what has come up, touches my heart because it's my life. I make a living off of having a dormitory building that's privately owned. I'm a landlord, and sometimes landlords haven't been painted in the greatest light because of the cost of our homing. I want to put at least a comment on it. I also, because of that dormitory, I have a restaurant license in town. And I can also tell you it's hard to swallow where my business is suffering every bit as bad as the others. And the LRA has on their own website, explains that hospitality businesses in Douglas counties are defined as a restaurant, bar, coffee shop, bakery, and event space. We'll just say coffee shop. Bourgeoisie Pig has a weird hut building built outside of their parking lot. I don't know how it meets any building code. It's on a variance that they can use a parking space for dining. And they also now qualify for having this type of assistance, which my organization is not qualified for. It's hard to swallow when you do try to fill out the paperwork and do these documents and you find out that you're not going to be qualified for. And it's already hard enough when restaurants aren't typically known for creating a living wage for most of their employees. And I would love to get Clint Countryman, which is my cook and employee, to ask him to speak if he was able to about how I never took him. I never laid him off when many people instantly lost their job in March 1st, and the restaurant and hospitality businesses were the first people to find their jobs as expendable. And now these same businesses are being able to maybe hire some people back, but probably still not providing a living wage. It's kind of tough. My other instance of really why I was here for today's speaking was you've all received an email from me. I like I said, I spoke with Sarah. I appreciate you, Commissioner Kelly, for responding to me. I didn't get even a government assistance check. I don't have anything for my business. I'm not asking for any money. I appreciate that you guys are there to do the work to provide care where they need to be. But what I do want to do is my own version of the utility assistance program, which is I believe in solar panels. I think that long-term letting my property use the power of the sun to lower my bill and make an efficiency and an improvement on the world is a beneficial thing. I put solar panels on my business. It was 100 solar panels. It was a significant thing. And to this day, you can look around KU campus and find that only one other business building mostly sports solar panels, and that would be the engineering building that Westar gave a grant to over a private entity like myself. So even in the good years, it was hard for the small guy to get the money that you would hope you could get. Instead, they decided KU's engineering building needs to have the free solar panels. But I powered through. I made it happen after 8 years of trying to fund it. I'm very proud of what I did. I've done it on my house. I've done it on my father's house. I've done it on my previous house. I've also learned exactly how difficult it can be in all my instances. I've volunteered for an organization, Flint Hills Renewable Energy Corporation, up around Manhattan and Wamego. I've seen how building codes are enforced there and how solar panels, even ground mount solar panels, are treated with, we're so glad you're willing to put your money and effort into this and feeding our grid, our community, putting money back into the county. I can tell you that my most recent experience is exactly the antithesis of that. And I have tried to add solar panels out to my farm. And yes, maybe it's trying to weave a story where I believe I wrote to you all that I'm trying to finish the story of my past father who loved his farm. He wanted to one day be nice and resilient. I wanted to revamp a 1865 house. I did everything I could to save the history of the building and all this work. One of the steps I tried to do was to take a big steel trailer that my father had and he used for his dogs, and it's resilient as all get out. And I tried to use an excavator, which I rented from United Rental here in the area, and I built a pond, and I went through and I built this berm where my solar panels could be mounted on top of this trailer at a 30-degree angle in a proper place that would make the solar panels efficient. And what ends up happening is, because I didn't put these on the roof of an 1865 house with the exact same Iron Ridge solar mantling, I am now privy to having to force the county to give me a variance approval of a pre-existing structure. I want to know that the red tape never ends, and despite the fact that the county had almost no presence in the code enforcement department in all of November, I still tried to meet a deadline that is set by Evergy by December 1st, which did not happen. And I just simply wanted to be able to use something that had history of my property that I own. I'm not doing for another business. It's not doing it for property or benefit. It's only for me to put some solar panels on, including the type of racking that would exactly go on top of a roof. I put that on this trailer. That it seems like we're at loggerheads that the county will not approve, because they just feel that I don't have apparently the same type of variances that are being allowed to organizations like LRA restaurants in town. That yeah, I get it. Everyone's hurting. I'm broke as hell, and I put a lot of work into this. But the county doesn't seem to always be treating everyone fairly. And I am that guy who's sitting here trying to be fair. I've tried to turn this farmhouse into a rental property. But you know why people do have high rents? Because I had to wait 3 months to get this thing open and an occupancy permit from when I really wanted to, because of red tape. And honestly, having a county official wait 2 weeks to make one phone call and then 2 weeks later to come back and make the corrections when everything was corrected in 5 hours after they left. These are the type of things that make people actually lose money. I just paid my property taxes after waiting in a massive line at the courthouse, and I didn't get to say, here's the people who did not pay for their rent over this course of this year. I just lost that money, and I don't have a assistance program that helps me out. All I am is one real guy trying not to ask for handouts in any way whatsoever. But I would certainly like to think that my solar panels, which I'm very certified and able to provide, and the NEC code that's 690, if they could quote anything I did wrong in that, I would love to support it. But what I was quoted was NEC code 104.9, I believe, which states no used equipment may be used on a project unless approved by the building official. That's a pretty general thing, especially in a house that was built in 1865. And to say that basically every item that you use has to come with the plastic on it originally. So I just say this is the real ground source of just how Renee has to probably meet a lot of people who have heart-wrenching stories every single day, and she helps give them a home and a bed to sleep in. And that just deserves so much accommodation. It would just bring you to tears to probably hear the stories she hears on a daily basis. I'm not asking for tears. I'm just trying to state this is the type of organization that in 2020, we still can't find a way that a single guy trying to use his farm, I can guarantee you that 2 years in a row, my farm has not made a penny. I can guarantee you that my business that has that restaurant license has not made a penny. It is all sucking. I mean, I'm almost glad to say my dad died in the last 3 years, because otherwise I would be completely broke and maybe looking for housing myself, because luckily my dad left me enough time that I could survive these 2 years. And I'm still trying to provide housing for this people. In fact, my own cook, I provide housing for them. So there you go. That's what I really want to show you. My experience is I wish that the actual trying to help people comes to the down to the human level. And just like the previous man said, in some ways we're worried about the Humane Society, but I know the Humane Society provides living wage for certain people. It needs to be when there's an actual person who's trying to finish the project and do a betterment of the county, that we don't punish them and we find ways that they can make their life easier. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other public comment?
I'm not seeing any commissioners.
Thank you, Jill. Okay.
I think he froze again.
Hi, Sarah. You want to talk about miscellaneous? I've been talking to myself for 5 minutes. Gee whiz. Not that long.
Thank you, commissioners. Want to make sure, yeah, in your packet is your weekly memo. Just some updates, reminder that we have just a Criminal Justice Coordinating Council next. No, actually, I think that's by mistake. I apologize. No, we do have Criminal Justice Coordinating Council next week, don't we? I'll verify that. I apologize. I'm also off track too. And there's a legislative update in the packet. Just some great news to share that the Spark Task Force has awarded an unexpected second round of funds for securing local food system grants, and 10 additional Douglas County food businesses and nonprofits receive funding from this. So this is a great addition to what we're already, in above and beyond CARES Act round 1 that was shared. And I think that's all I have, commissioners, to point out on the memo.
Thank you, Sarah. Commissioners, any other miscellaneous items? Okay, well, we'll be back here next week. And maybe we'll have some more CARES Act money to dole out. Hope everybody who needs it is spending it. And if there's nothing else, we are adjourned.
Thank you.